Greetings, Wilkinson here. I am back in Palm Springs, and my guest today is Marc. Who is he, you say? Well, he's a somatic therapist, a sex shaman, and a sacred prostitute. Well, that's a mouthful. I wonder if that was the right term. Anyway, say hi to my people, Marc.
Hello everybody. Hi, Wilkinson. Great to be here.
And Marc is in Palm Springs. Where do you live? Where are you based?
I'm normally based in Sitges near Barcelona, and my work base is London.
Okay. But you're here for a workshop last weekend and one starting tomorrow.
Yeah. So I'm on a bit of a California tour. I've been touring and doing workshops around California for the past 6 weeks.
How are the California guys?
Wonderful. You know, I love, there's a lot of commitment, a lot of depth. And a
lot of woo-woo, I think, too.
A lot of woo-woo.
Springs, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's even measures of depth and commitment and flaky and fluffy.
Sounds like fun.
Yes.
So let's hear a little of your background. Where'd you grow up and how'd you get where you are now? Tell me a little.
Yeah, it's not, you know, I wonder if it's a terribly fascinating story. I was born in Montreal. My parents were immigrants to Montreal, to Canada. My background is Greek, British, and when I was one, we left. We went to live in South Korea, and then we came back, and I, tried different kinds of things and ended up in the corporate world, moved to Europe, moved to the UK, became an interior designer, ran my own interior design studio. That's kind of the background from before doing what I'm doing now. That was, I say the first 25 years of my life was that kind of little journey. Yeah.
And we talked a little, as we always do, as I do with my guests. So you started out figuring you're gay.
Yeah, I'd say there was so my parents were Greek, British descent, but they grew up in the Middle East, and so being gay wasn't an option. But I grew up in Montreal, which was at the time probably one of the most open-minded cities in the world, along with San Francisco and Berlin, and so there was a real conflict. And I think that I came to the realization that I liked men as well as being interested in women, but I think that I fell into the gay trap and then needing to identify as gay, and now I feel like that's expanded, which feels really nice. But yeah, I for a long time I identified as gay, and I think now I would identify more as polysexual.
Okay. Did you come out to your parents as gay?
I fell out.
You fell out.
I fell out.
How'd that happen?
Fell out. Yeah, it was a really funny story, actually. I was 18, and at the time, this was before the internet, and there were no Grindr, and there was no gaydar even, or any of that. And so I was using these phone line services. I don't know if you had them here, but we had them, the phone line services. And I found a guy who was maybe 10 or 15 years older than me, and he had this idea that he wanted to invite me to his house and tie me up and do all these things to me. And so we exchanged phone numbers, and he would spend hours just telling me everything he wanted to do to me. And he was probably wanking while he was doing it. And I was 18. I hadn't had sex yet, and I was just sitting on my bed listening to this guy go on. And this is, God, back in the time before mobile phones. And so my mom picks up the phone of the house, and she hears me being talked to in this way. Evidently it was a stupid thing to do. And I think that I was used to talking to him when my parents weren't there. And then one day I thought, well, what's going to happen? I'll talk to him while my parents are here. And then what happened is my mom picked up the phone and heard and lost her shit. I remember lying on the bed on my belly and listening to, like I wasn't touching myself. I wasn't even getting in on it or anything. I was just listening to what this guy was saying. And then all of a sudden I'm lying there and this phone comes flying past my face and hits the wall. And I look up and it's my mom. I just get off the phone. And I got to go, bye.
So curious. So that's a pay service, right? The phone thing, right?
No. Well, it's a pay.
Or was it a chat room where you were hanging?
No, we like I called him or he called me. We were on the phone.
Oh, actually on the phone.
Yeah. So we met each other on an ad.
Okay.
They probably had a free option back then, like you had the free option and then you paid if you wanted more features, I guess.
Because I was going to say, how did you get it?
How did I get it?
With a phone bill.
I really don't remember. Okay. I'm sure there must have been some payment that went through on the phone bill. God, it feels like a whole other time, doesn't it?
But they didn't catch that. That wasn't the thing that triggered it.
No, it was and I thought I remembered hearing a click, and I thought, I should probably check in now if there's someone on the line. Probably there was a part of me that wanted to be found out, so I fell out of the closet.
So after she threw the phone at you, then did you have a discussion?
Not really, because it was just a fit, and my parents just really had a fit, and it was not very pretty for a few months. My parents, it was punishment. It was real punishment. I was 18, but it was punishment for a long time, for about 9 months.
You were still living at home.
Still living at home, and it was pure punishment. And then the stroke of luck came when my dad's job transferred him to another city. We were living in Montreal, and he got transferred to Toronto. And I lied, which they know, but I lied and made up that my credits at my university were not transferable to outside of the province. So that I knew that would keep me there, and it would keep me from moving with them on the move.
Your big break.
Yeah, it was my big break. It was my break-free time. And so my parents, and it worked. The last thing they wanted was for me to lose my credits. So they paid for an apartment for me, and they paid my lifestyle. And I had all of a sudden went from being in prison to being completely free, which was an incredible gift. I had this beautiful apartment right by the gay village in Montreal. And, my parents were wondering, why do you want to live here? It's not so close to your university. It's really funny. So it was real liberation all of a sudden, going from prison to liberation. And so it was actually a really beautiful time.
Was that a wild time?
It was a wild time. Lots of drinking, lots of sex, lots of passing out drunk. And that turned into a little bit of a coke problem, a little bit of a drug problem as well, in the early 20s. Just living a life in which I needed to forget. I needed to disconnect. I needed to forget. And I moved to London, and that cleaned everything up, because all of...
Finish school first, or...
I did finish school, and I got a nice corporate job, which didn't last very long, lasted maybe 2 years. That wasn't for me. And then just kind of went to London, went to art school, and went down the path of design. And
so were you doing residential?
I was doing residential. I was doing interior design for businesses. Yeah, I was doing interior design for everything from hotels to shops, fashion. You might know some of the names like Marc Jacobs, Vivienne Westwood. I've done some of their shops around the world. It was a really wonderful time. So I had my own studio. It was it was a great time. It was a great time to be in London.
So after 2 years, then what?
Well, no, I did that for about 10 years.
Oh, 10.
Yeah. But the 2 years was a job that was more, it was my kind of a corporate job before design.
Before the design.
Before design.
Right.
Yeah, design was my own studio that I had, which kind of was handed to me, which is really, really a gift. And I was in art school, and I remember I was preparing to do a master's, and my teacher just said to me, don't do a master's, just go. You're ready, just be in the world. And so I left, and wow. he was right. Everything unfolded, and I had my own studio within a year. It was a really, really wonderful, magical time. It was a great time to be in London. London was doing very well at the time, early 2000s. And then, so that was that time. And then it led to what I do now somehow. There was some a path or a bridge to what I'm doing now.
Okay, talk about the bridge. How did that happen?
Yeah, so that was also
that's a little different than design.
Yeah, it is very different. It's extremely different. It was a very messy bridge. I was living in Paris, and I had this relationship with a partner that was chaotic and very, very Parisian and chaotic, and a lot
was he French?
He was French, and there was a lot of arguing and a lot of and we had a fight. We were on holiday together on a Greek island. We had a fight. We beat each other up. And it shook me to feel like, oh, wow, like, how did I let myself get into this? I don't remember who started the fight. I don't remember. I think we both started it, or we were definitely shouting, and then someone must have hit the other, and the other responded. And so it's not a victim story at all. It's two people, two grown men losing their shit and participating, and mutual violence. And, you know, and it shook me. And what really, really was defining from that experience, we were on a Greek island. And, you know, he wanted to continue the relationship. I wanted to end it. And I went to another hotel, and he said, let's meet in a couple of days. We'll talk about what we do, about what the way forward is. And so we met on the beach to talk about what the way forward would be. And he said, let's forget it all happened. I said, I can't do that. And so I walked away, and he said, if you walk away, we're never coming back together. And I said, okay. So I walked away. But what's significant about this story is that something happened to me that I couldn't understand at the time. All of a sudden, I was walking on the beach, and I was frozen, just frozen. I couldn't walk anymore. I just had to stop. And I just,
after you walked away from him?
After walking away,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, I'm frozen, paralyzed, and all of a sudden everything started to get blurry around me, and it wasn't like, and it was very strange. And all of a sudden I looked down at my body, and it felt like the limits of my physical body were starting to blur. And then the limits of everything around me, the houses on the hills, the sun, the sky, the barren landscape, the sand, all of it started to kind of merge, and I merged into it, and it kind of became this spiral. Never seen anything like that in my life. I mean, at that point, I was not a spiritual person. I was a go-go dancing muscle boy from London that lived in Paris, very superficial. You know, I was a go-go dancer on the club stages in London, Zurich, Paris, Mykonos. And this happened to me, and I thought I did not have a spiritual bone in my body. And I was like, what is going on? And it was a oneness experience, and couldn't formulate what that was at the time, because I think the limits of my spirituality at the time had been that I had maybe flipped through a book by the Dalai Lama, which had been at the back of my closet since. And
so it wasn't an out-of-body experience per se.
No, it wasn't. It was a very embodied,
and you were the oneness of the universe. Everything was coming to you, right?
Yeah, okay. Oneness with everything, dissolving into oneness with everything, which was disturbing, because I thought, wow, I didn't know what this is. And then I came back from the experience.
You say disturbing, but I'm going to myself, wow, that's so cool.
Oh, it was incredible. It was incredible. Yeah. I mean, I'm now, it's become my whole work to understand what this is, and to support people being in that space. Right. But at the time, it was so far away from what I knew of the world, and it was something I couldn't understand. And I thought, okay, what is this? And that was disturbing, but it was the beginning of a beautiful journey. You know, I moved back to London from Paris, and a friend suggested I try tantra, and so I flew to Milan.
Before you go on then, so I have a question. So when you were having this experience, did you like see your auric field, or was that not involved, or how did all that unfold?
No, I think it just went straight into oneness. Like, I saw lots of colors that could have been, I mean, they were energy, I suppose, but they wasn't. I didn't specifically look at anything that went, oh, that must be my aura.
Right.
You know, it just went so fast, and I just dissolved, and everything dissolved, and I couldn't see. I went from form to spirals to nothingness. You know, I don't know if you're a fan of Damien Hirst, the artist, and the British artist, and he has these spiraling paint pieces, and it kind of looks like that, if you're a fan of that.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry to interrupt.
No, wonderful.
No. So you went.
So I went. So a friend recommended to try tantra, and I flew to Milan for the next tantra workshop I could find. It was a very challenging weekend workshop, and that I wanted to run away from, but ended up at the end of the weekend signing up for a 1-year training in Berlin.
Wow.
Were run by these guys. So it was this polarity of like, this is the most uncomfortable and difficult thing I've ever done, and I need to be here. I need to do more of this. And so I engaged in this 1-year training, and through that year, a lot of things happened, you know. And I went on the training because I wanted to fall in love. I wanted to have a solid relationship. and I got everything except that, which was really, really interesting. And but I realized, I think, that there was a lot more to tantra than sex, and it was about affecting every part of your life. So from this training, which was really tantra based, I got into somatic therapy, which was really important for me, which is really about the ways that we can heal through connecting to our bodies. And that's so I got into that. And then I was initiated to something that's called the Mystery School. And I don't know if you ever heard of what that is. So the Mystery School is basically a tradition that has existed across time at different points in time and at different places around the world. It's mainly attributed to Greece and ancient Egypt. And they were gatherings that happened at temples in which people would learn about how do we connect to our source? How do we connect to the oneness of everything? And that's the way it clicked. This is why I was put on this path. Like I had this experience on the Greek island. I merged with everything in existence. Someone recommended tantra, but it had to lead me to this. It had to lead me to coming back to oneness through this work, the Mystery School. And so, that's been kind of the journey to where I got to know. But really, the whole time I did it for myself. I did it for me to grow. And what the Mystery School looked like is my initiation into it was that I was at the end of this 1-year training in Berlin, and we were invited to spend 3 days in pitch black darkness together as a group. And it was an extremely powerful experience of...
Oh, you were together doing
We were 35 men.
Yeah, because I've heard of that, but it's usually a solo type of thing.
Yeah, they're dark room retreats. They're solo, but they can be in groups. And It's for me, it's been the most powerful thing I've ever experienced. It's something that I do with my clients and my students. And it's really a dissolving of everything. And the benefit of the dissolving of everything is that the more can awaken within you. There's a direct relationship, or I suppose an inverse relationship between how much of my attention is engaged with external stimuli. What do you say here? Do you say stimuli? Yeah. Well, we say stimuli, I think. But
either way,
how much of you is engaged with external stimuli, and how much is engaged with your internal field? And I think that the more you can dissolve what's happening outside of you, the more what's inside of you can awaken. And it's a scary thing because all the shadows come up, all the demons, all the darkness, but it also, the power, the beauty, the gifts, it all has to come up. And
so you have 35 guys in the dark.
35 guys in the dark.
The logistics of that must be a nightmare.
Yeah, to be honest, the
like where you're sleeping, you're going to the bathroom, you're brushing your teeth.
Were a bit of a nightmare. To be honest, that experience there was actually a little bit of light to make the logistics easier. There were, there was a food area which had a little bit of light. There was a light to get you to the toilet. There was a little candle by the door. Today, when I hold these spaces for my students, it's pitch black. And you walk to the shower, you walk hands to the wall, you bump into people, bump into things, you drop things. But there is such a benefit to being in the dark for that long. After 8 hours, your brain chemistry starts to change massively. And with the brain chemistry changing, neuroplasticity happens, your perspective on life shifts permanently.
So besides the darkness, are you silent as well or not?
We are, in my work, we're nonverbal. So I can only speak for myself because
right.
types of dark.
Well, let's talk about your stuff.
In what I do, it's nonverbal. So It's not quiet, but nonverbal, meaning you can make sounds, you can sigh, you can exclaim, you can, something, a shout, if something's being processed that needs to be processed, can happen. But there's no verbal talking, there's no vocal speaking in words that can be understood because we're dropping into a nonverbal place.
Okay, so let's do a scenario here. So how many guys are in your group when you're doing the...
I try to keep it really small. It'll be about 8, 9...
Okay, so this is going to bring stuff up. So you have somebody that's kind of losing their shit. So they're over there losing their shit and you're hearing that. So how does that work?
Yeah, it's a very interesting scenario because what happens is that we are in a space where things can fall into balance, because we're in a space where we are in connection with oneness. We are in connection with source because everything that divides us has fallen away. It's fallen away. And so we are in a place of connection to source. And in that space, everything falls into balance. You just have to trust. And so the beauty and the challenge of interaction in those spaces, it's a group. First of all, to get into the space with my work, you have to have been part of a group that's been working together for a year. So there's a level of trust.
So we
know each other. There's trust, and people will trigger each other. Someone will make a noise, and another person will react because they'll have a strong reaction to it, and it brings up what it brings up. Touch can happen, and that can be triggering or reactive. And so, I've had experiences of hearing a person scream, and it felt like every hair on my skin was just rising up because I was like, oh, I know that they've just released like 40 years of trauma that was trapped in their body somehow, and someone may have touched them the wrong way, or someone may have made a sound that triggered something in them. And I can't do anything more than get close and hold them or hold space somehow, knowing that it's going to be okay. But that's the intelligence. That's the intelligence of our body and of our field. As a therapist, you think I think I know, how can I help? But really, anything that I think I know is a projection. In that space, we're left with truth. There's no projection anymore because I can't project. I can't say, hey, I think you must be going through this.
Right.
Can I give this to you? Well, I can't do that. So I can only trust that the powers of the universe will make everything fall into place, and they do.
So where do you do this? It's not in a black box somewhere. Where you do it where do you do it?
So there are specific places that are made for this kind of thing. They don't generally accommodate groups as much. So I've got a space in Spain that tries to accommodate us, and they organize everything.
So they black out the windows,
they black out
do all that stuff.
They black out the rooms, and they black out the showers, and they organize the food with dark curtains. And there's I once did it in a house in Greece because I wanted to be near an ancient temple, which was really powerful, but the logistics of that was very complicated. But really, yeah. So that's where that usually happens. It's an extremely powerful experience. It's really funny because I was just on this last weekend, I was just teaching a workshop called The Sex Shaman, Sacred Prostitute. And I was talking to somebody after the workshop, and I remember thinking, the real training to become a sex shaman or sacred prostitute happens in the dark. That's where you train. There are no schools. It's a vocation that finds you, but it develops and grows. Your power develops and grows, and your ability develops and grows the more you connect to yourself and to the source of life that's within you. And that's expedited when you're in a space where you're just in deep connection to source and there's nothing else, no option of anything else. And so that's, for me, that's the training. It's a school.
So when you're in one of these, I'll call it a retreat. I don't know if you do, but when you're in one of these, are you clothed or no?
You can choose to be clothed. You can choose to be naked. I had one of my most powerful experiences having sex in one of those spaces myself, like not with students when I was a participant, when I was a student. And I think in that space, we weren't really allowed to have sex or to engage with each other, but it happened. And it happened. It was someone that I knew that I had already been connecting with. And it was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. And I realized, well, this is interesting. Like there's something about we reach a cosmic place, and we're able to reach a place of cosmic sexuality with another person. And that's really powerful.
What do you like best about your work?
What I like best about my work, watching people transform, watching people expand, watch people become more of who they truly are, watch people heal, watch people realize that they're not the limited expression of themselves that they thought they were, is incredibly satisfying. I get to be part of experiences for people that are the most important parts of their life, or most important moments of their life. And that's incredible, and And I think the absolute best part of what I do is I work with a lot of people who want to be facilitators, who want to share this work in the world. And that's satisfying to know that the work is not stopping with them. It's never stopping with them, but the fact of knowing that they have the active intention to be in the world as these people, as a sacred intimate, as a healer, as a sacred prostitute or a sex shaman, whatever they would use as a word. And I especially love when I work with people who are psychotherapists or psychiatrists or a licensed sexologist or whoever, and I can offer them something that can expand beyond the limitations of, oh, this is what we learned, this is what's in the books, this is what's, and I think that we don't have enough emphasis in our society today on the teachings that come from within, which is something that the ancients knew, right? The ancients, ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, the Maya, the Inca, they knew wisdom came from within. And today we rely on books, but this is what I think is part of what's going on with COVID, is that that's starting to unravel and dismantle. I think now when you speak to people and you tell them the intelligence is within you and you need to make space for it, people are lit. They're like, yes, finally, but I think it took something like COVID for us to get that.
Well, yeah, COVID forced us all to go inside.
Exactly.
Basically. Yeah.
And some people still found ways of escaping with lots of Netflix and and that's normal. It's okay. Porn use went up, and it's and that's fine that happened. But I think that there was beyond the idea that it forced us to go in, we started to question things. We started to question the systems, and we also started to question, hey, if everything could just go at any moment, am I living what I came here to do? If everything could literally fall apart in one moment, have I done what I came here to do? And I think that was a big question for me. I remember, sitting in, when COVID hit Spain, I was living in Spain when COVID hit, and we, at the time, when it hit Spain, we had 25% of the deaths of the whole world for a while in Spain. And that was really like, what's going to happen? Here, what's going to happen to us? What's going to happen? Oh, then obviously it spread to the US and everything changed. But for a while, you were wondering what's going to happen to us. And you couldn't.
Will we all disappear?
Yeah, what's going to happen? And then there was this sense of a liberation from well, if it's all falling apart, then there's nothing else to do but to be who you came here to be. There's nothing left to do. The truth will save us. And the things we love save us.
So when we started, you listed 3 things that you do. Can you talk a little about each of those? Because my listeners are not going to know the difference on some of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the somatic therapist is a person who can, usually what we do is we help people with trauma, and it's about
releasing it from their bodies and stuff.
Yeah, for me, trauma is a complete, the trauma resolution process is a process of completion. It's a completion of a pattern that began as in the face of a circumstance decades ago, years ago. A pattern began as a result of a defense to in the face of certain circumstances. And I see trauma resolution as a completion of that pattern, a completion of that defense. And I did that for a long time. I trained in that and I did it, and I was really enjoying what I was doing. And then I was initiated into shamanism. So that took me to sex shamanism. I was initiated into shamanism a few times, actually. Different shamans told me, you're a shaman, and I couldn't really believe it until I ended up in the open fields of Mongolia. And I got it. I'm like, okay, I'm a shaman. This is who I am. This is what I am. And so, a shaman, for me, I've come to learn that there are different types of shamans. There are traditional shamans, which are the shamans that are, the Mongolian, the Peruvian, the Native American tribes, shamans. And then there are the shamans that are vibrational shamans, which are the ones that exist in the Western world, but that are very much in connection with the spirit realm. So connecting to spirits to bring healing to people. And then there's the energy shaman, which is the shaman that connects directly to source. So doesn't connect through spirit, connects directly into the power of source. And that's what I feel I was initiated to. And it looks very different from a lot of the other shamanism that's around. And then there are contradictions around that.
How so?
Well, that I think that we have certain ideas in society that a shaman looks a certain way. They grew up in nature and, as part of this Navajo tribe, or they grew up in the Siberia and the forest or whatever. And I think that a shaman is someone who has found a deep connection to source and is able to share that with others. And that's what I try to do in my work is share that with others, And it's a very similar archetype to the sacred prostitute, which is really a person that both the sex shaman and the sacred prostitute are able to support healing in others through sexuality, through a sexual act, and it comes from us doing our work on ourselves and developing ourselves in a way that as we engage sexually with someone else, they can also be supported in their transformation. And that happens because sex is an act of merging of energies. When we have sex with someone, we merge energetically. And what that means is that we are two energetic systems. Science has proven this, that each human being is an energetic system. And what that means is that we're essentially oscillating, vibrating energetic beings. And any energetic system, it's been proven that when it comes in connection with another energetic system, they will start to oscillate and vibrate in the same way. So they will change. The way that they vibrate and oscillate changes, and transformation happens. And so,
is that in a good way or a bad way? Or could it be both? Bad way?
I can't see. I mean, I try to get away from the polarity of good and bad. My sense or my information or my knowledge is that the strongest vibration is the vibration of source, right? And so it always wins.
Well, I'm thinking of, we're both on the same path, basically heading in one direction. That would be the good, what I would call good. That's probably a bad word, but I'm also thinking about when you're in a relationship with someone that is not the right one for you, and what if you apply what you're saying to that, then how does that work? Because how does that work?
Yeah.
If you're with someone that is not a vibrational match for you, then what?
I think that's a very interesting question. I think that the difference is in knowing that it's an understanding of, am I taking on their energetic patterns? Am I taking on their energy, or am I just sharing an energetic space with them? And that's the difference. Those are two different things. Those people who refer to themselves as empaths tend to be people who will take on someone else's energetic patterns. So you're in you have, let's say we would use the word negative energy and or dark energy or dense energy. And I have clear energy and light energy, and then being in your presence, I have dark energy. And that's a narrative that a lot of us have. I think that a lot of energy work, for instance, Reiki, is very much based on these ideas of good energies and bad energies, and I'll give you and you'll receive. And I don't really see it that way. I used to do Reiki, and I don't really see it that way anymore. I think that first of all, I would say I chose to merge energetically with this person. My being knew what it was doing when I got into a lovership or a partnerhood with this person. I knew what I was doing. So why did I choose this? Why did I choose it? Why did I let this in? And then I'm letting it in, and I'm deciding to let it in. Why? That's my responsibility. No one else's. So when I was doing Reiki and everyone was talking about cleansing after and purification and protection, I was like, why? If I let all this in and I let myself develop as a result of it coming into my field, I can grow. I can grow. You don't grow by pushing things away that are uncomfortable for you. You grow by sitting with those things that are uncomfortable. That is the tantric path. That is the tantric path. One of the major problems I have with the tantric path is that somehow in the last 50 years in the West, we've decided that it was about pleasure, and it was about bliss, and it was about ecstasy. It absolutely is not. If you're coming to a tantra workshop thinking you want to have a blissful or ecstatic experience, that is wonderful, but I'll tell you something, that experience will be limited to the hours that you're sitting in that room with that group of people, and you will go home and you will say, what happened? Now it's worse. Why are things even darker? Why am I more contracted? But that's because you gripped and grabbed to the beauty and bliss that existed in that moment, rather than actually developing your own pathway to ecstasy and bliss, which requires a walk through darkness, which requires swimming through the sludge. There's no other way. There's no other way. I mean, there is another way if You just happen to be one of those people that was put on this earth and walking a path of light. I don't know many people who have that. Yeah,
Right.
I've known a couple who grew up in the jungle in the Amazon or whatever, and they had this gift of like, oh wow, great, I'm born in light. This is wonderful. And not many people like that in the world. I think that our job is to walk through the sludge of being with everything, and it's not about good or bad. It's about neutrality, the neutrality of everything, which is why I'm a big fan of BDSM, because I'm a big fan of the power of seeing the pleasure and pain merge into one. The idea that both can be the same, that which I defend myself from, or I try to keep away, I can actually also enjoy. And, I'm not a kingster, but I can see the power of this work. And so for me, I guess what I was saying is in response to what you're saying about that couple, that energy. And it's a sense of like, when I decide I'm going to be on the tantric path, on the path of the sex shaman or the sex prostitute, I am making a commitment to say yes and to be at one with everything in existence. And oneness is not exclusive. You cannot choose to be in oneness and say, I want to be in oneness, but not that, and not that. That negates the whole idea of oneness. You can calibrate and say, I'm ready for this now. I'm not ready for this yet. You can calibrate, but you cannot be on a path of oneness and say, this is not part of the path. I've worked with clients that were possessed by entities. They said, oh, I'm possessed. I need your help. Exorcisms. Fine. I did it. You go, okay, but why did you call this in? Like, why did you? And I'm not putting you down. I'm not damning you, but I'm just saying, until the day you realize you called this in, I can't do anything for you, because you're going to call it in again. I can get rid of it, but you're going to call another one in until you realize why, and sit with it and fill up your cup, like become a whole being, or get on the path to becoming a whole being. Otherwise, this is going to happen again. And so this whole thing, I see this whole thing about seeing the other, the dark energy over there, is actually detrimental to us, because we end up creating, it's like having a baby and making sure, you put a hazmat suit around it because you don't want it to get any infections. It's like, throw that baby into the mud, let it get sick, let it get everything it needs so that it builds immune system. But it's the same thing with our energy, and that's how we grow. Yeah.
What is your workshop coming up this weekend?
So this weekend, I'm really curious about it. So it's one of my favorite topics. It's called The Erotic Sun, and it explores specifically daddy fantasies, but generally it'll tend to explore sexual fantasies that we would have had as young boys. And it's edgy. It's an edgy practice. It's a therapeutic space. It isn't about play, although play is part of it, but it really is about getting to know yourself, and a big part of my work is figuring out what our sexual fantasies are trying to tell us about ourselves, what they're showing us about ourselves. Every act of sexuality, I was talking about wholeness just now, and I mean, every act of sexuality is an act of seeking wholeness. And so when I look to my sexuality, I can realize, oh, I'm looking for this. I'm looking for aliveness to be more whole. I'm looking for safety to be more whole. I'm looking for joy to be more whole, in order for me to be more whole. And so how do I can see with my fantasies that this is what I'm doing, and I can acknowledge that, and then I can find more wholeness, not necessarily just with the use of the fantasy, but through the awakening of what's missing for me to be whole. And so the fantasies are a way in. And I decided to do the Erotic Sun the Daddy Fantasy Workshop, because it was a fantasy that was coming up so often with clients, men and women. This daddy issue is a very big topic. For a lot of people, a disconnection happens with dad at a formative time in our life. Dad starts to see that you're growing pubic hair. Dad starts to see that your genitals are developing. And what happens? Distance,
right?
Division, and man up, and defensiveness, and this creates a separation. It creates a disconnection that some of us will spend decades trying to reconnect.
Right.
And this workshop is meant to offer people a fast track. I hate that word. I suppose I shouldn't use that word, but a way into the exploration that allows this reawakening of what we're seeking. The daddy within, which we're all really looking to awaken in a lot of ways, and it's fun.
Right. So is it just this workshop's for men? Is that correct?
This workshop's for men, and I have done similar workshops with women as well, but this one is specifically for men. Yeah.
And are most of the guys attending, are they gay, straight? How do they identify, or don't they?
Usually they identify mainly as gay because it's a men-only workshop, indeed. But I do have straight men who come for exploration and to try new things. And, you know, we're changing. The world is changing and times are changing. And, you know, couples that seem heteronormative and that are polyamorous will be more open to this, you know, different explorations. And these are conscious spaces to do that. You know, some of my retreats in Costa Rica are starting to attract men that are dating women, but that need a safe space to explore, you know, and that's a safe space. A lot of these men that I meet, you know, they open Grindr and they get scared. You know, they're like, come in my mouth. You know, you see all these like people that their profile name is come in my mouth or whatever it is. Right. And you go like, okay, I just want to, you know, I want to dip my toe in. I'm trying to like, it's scary for somebody. If you imagine like it is scary for someone who's not in that realm. Right. So I would like to create safe spaces for people to be able to explore.
And this is going to occur on Saturday and Sunday.
That's right. Yeah, it's a 2-day intensive.
When do you leave town?
So I leave town on Monday, then I'm going to Mexico, and I'll be doing a dark room retreat on my own, which I'm really excited about.
The solo one.
The solo one, what I was talking about, the dissolving of everything in existence. I'm very excited, but I can also feel the pulsating in my body as it's getting close. Because it's like, ooh.
How long will you do that? How long is the session?
I'll be in the space for 6 days.
Wow.
And yeah, my fantasy would be to be able to spend a whole month in there one day. I would be curious what that would look like.
So you go to a place that facilitates this specifically, right?
There are places that will often have single rooms and they take care of the food and you have your little bathroom.
Now, what you're doing?
That's where I'm going. Yeah. That is where I'm going. Yeah. And it's different from what I facilitate for others, which is a group experience.
Right.
Yeah. Because if it was a single experience, I don't have any business, you know, facilitating that. But if I prefer to facilitate group experiences in this. And after that, it's the jungle in Costa Rica for a few months.
What are you going to do in the jungle?
Teaching a few different workshops. So really excited about that. Different workshops about sexuality in the jungle, a kink workshop, a erotic energy workshop, and sex shaman, sacred prostitute, facilitator training. So lots of wonderful, juicy things coming up.
So my last question, and I'd love to keep talking, but I know I need to get you to your next appointment because we talked about this before. So I always ask my guests, so your life experiences to this point, what are a couple of main things you've learned about life?
Main things I've learned about life. I guess the main learning is that it's all play. You know, that it's all play, it's all a play. I think that's the main learning that I've come to from this Tantra path, especially from being in the dark, from the mystery, is the reality. This really is all just a game. And it doesn't mean it's a game so I disengage. It's a game so I can be even more engaged, because when I know it's a game, I know I'm bigger than all of it. And then when I know I'm bigger than all of it, I can really engage. I can really show up fully, fearless. And even if there is fear, that's part of the game, rather than it being, you know, a consuming experience that's bigger than me and I'm just, you know, at the effect of. And I think that's a big difference between how I lived before finding this path and how I live now, is that I used to be consumed by the world around me. I used to be consumed that everything was bigger than me. I would fall apart. And now I look around and I look at everything with the sense that things can get to me, or things can be challenging and things can bother me, but there's an undercurrent or an undertone of always knowing that everything is exactly as it should be, and that I'm bigger than it, and there's something much bigger than this going on, and I'm observing this like a movie, like a virtual reality game, like a play. I don't know if you ever saw this movie called Holy Motors.
No.
Its claim to fame was that Kylie was in it for 10 minutes at the end of it, Kylie Minogue.
Right.
And it was this movie where these actors, you know, they die, like they're like playing these characters and they'll die on the street. And then all of a sudden they get up from their death and get into this white limo comes drive by, and they get into the limo and they just strip off their costume. And it's like, okay, where are we going next? So then they get the next message to where they need to go next. They go there and they play these new characters where they die. And then another limo will come and pick them up. And then they come back to life, strip off the costume, get in the limo and go to the next location. And they're just going from location to location, playing these characters that kill each other, that kill others, that die. But they keep coming back. And at the end of the movie, all the cars gather in this parking lot, all these limos. And you realize that the lesson is the whole world is just a play. And we're all playing these characters. And we can be in the aliveness and the juiciness of it all. But there's so much in knowing that it's just a play.
What's the name of the movie again?
It's called Holy Motors. Yeah. And so for me, that's what I love about my work too, is that when we're playing with fantasies, we're playing sometimes with trauma that's 40 or 50 or 60 years old, but we're playing. It's like, well, I'm your daddy for these next 10 minutes. You'll be my daddy for the next 10 after this. And you're my daddy. Tie me up. We're playing. But underneath, we're working with some big things that are affecting our life. But we're seeing the play. We're seeing the fact that it's not as big as we thought.
Do you believe in multiple lives? Past lives?
Yeah,
or not?
Not. I definitely do. I don't believe in the therapeutic process of going into those lives. I mean, I have done it. I've been there and I've done it. And I think that there's so much going on in this life for you to sit with, that I think that there's a level of disengagement with something from a past life. And I kind of disengage when I hear a person saying, oh, I was this in a past life, but that's been released now, so I'm fine. It's like, well, work with what's happening here and now. There's enough going on here. Right? There's enough going on here and now. You've got financial difficulties. You're falling apart. Your body's this. Work with that, because otherwise there's no point in working with what happened in a past life that that died from 40 years ago. There's no point in doing that if you're not addressing what's happening here and now. So I believe in it. Do I think it's the most effective healing route? Not personally.
And what's coming up on your horizon besides the workshops you just discussed?
Well, I'm trying to write books. I have tons of notes, and I've got about 4 books of notes that are different that I really want to get onto, and it's not something I'm good at. Like I don't sit but I have them, and I really need to come to life. So hopefully they'll come into life and in fruition, and they'll be published eventually.
Well, I would love to talk more, but I need to photograph you for my podcast little blurb there, and I need to get you where you're going. So yes. I think we need to end this. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
I really enjoy you.
I do too.
You're a good guy.
Thank you for giving me this space, Wilkinson.
Thanks, Marc.